are alive and well in many ways, and that's not going away.
This is the North American Service broadcasting on 17.70, 15.42, 12.05.
How you will worship him together.
What have you done to its eyes?
The next time you're frightened in the dark, don't scream.
They are not what they claim to be.
You're listening to Radio.
You ever just drink water?
You know, I ask that to people all the time. Or I'll ask them, have you ever had water before?
Yeah. What did they say?
They go, oh, yeah.
I'm a human. I drink water.
People don't
No,
get
you're
it.
not.
You're a fool.
You're a fool. You're a freak.
You're a freaky fool of a man.
They're like, oh, just Powerade. Shut up.
That's not water.
It's not water.
That's poison.
That's poison. And you don't know what it's like to be a real anarchist.
Welcome back to Radio Grave. I'm here with
holy
Amber.
shit. Yeah. Hi, I'm here with Dom. Hi, I'm here with Dom.
Thank you.
My host, my queen,
My liege.
my liege,
My lord.
my lord. Danel. My Danel.
The dainty Danal lord of Anal Kingdom.
Oh, this is part 2 of Crescent, a love story.
Yes.
Yes. We wanted to make it one episode, but we couldn't.
It's a lot of things.
You're just going to have to deal with 2 weeks of Valentine's Day, lovemaking, sex.
Oh my god.
Hybrid babies.
Hybrid what?
Hybrid people.
I didn't know this was coming up.
Come.
Come.
Yeah, but basically part 2 of Crescent, a love story. Last episode, we ended off with Crescent and David just having the best sex of their lives.
And falling in love.
And falling in love, actually. Mm-hmm. No longer having hypersexual, business-like sexual encounters.
In the woods.
But actual, real, like metaphysical meetings of intimacy and love and romance. Mm-hmm. That's where we left off. And now we are going to be moving into our next episode, which is even crazier than the first one, if you can believe it.
I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we believe it.
Do you?
Believe him?
Yeah, do you believe all of it?
Yes, I really do.
I don't see a reason not to.
Yeah, same. I don't really see a reason why not to believe him. It might sound funny on the air. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not looking at his paintings. You're not looking at him or hearing his voice, but
Google it.
You just go look at the Instagram.
Yeah, or just watch that documentary. It's a really good documentary.
Yeah, or just watch Love and Saucers. You literally have no reason to not do it. It's free on YouTube and it's free on Tubi.
Tubi.
Yeah.
I love Tubi.
Yeah.
It's got the good.
It's got that good. And if you want to buy Love in an Alien Purgatory, it's like $30. You have to buy it like at full price. I tried to like buy like an ebook or like an art. It doesn't even matter. So it's hard. You have to pay full price for it.
Did you buy it?
Yeah, I own it now.
Nice.
But it was like $35 when I bought it. Damn. I don't know if it's discounted now, but
Watch, by the time this goes up, it's like 50 cents.
Well, and yeah, I know, right? But it's only 60 pages.
That's a lot of money for 60 pages. I do get that. But
well, and also like not to talk shit about like anything because it's obviously like self-published.
I think part of it, one, it's self-published, but also because it's so niche, that tends to raise prices.
Yeah.
I went to Powell's the last time I was in Portland, and there was a book. It was about a psychic who was communicating with Hitler from beyond the grave, and she had interviewed him. And I was like, holy shit. And I was like, oh, how much is this? Because it was like a shitty little, almost like a zine.
Yeah.
And it was like $50. I was like, yeah, they know what they have. Like,
yeah.
That makes sense that it's expensive, even though it's not worth that much.
I have the Betty Luca book. Fuck. We're literally just about to talk about it in this episode. Let me see. The Andreessen Affair. No, I'm stupid. Not that one. It's one of Raymond Fowler's books.
Okay.
I feel dumb not remembering it, but this bookstore here had a copy, a huge hardback that was signed by Raymond Fowler.
Oh, sick.
And it was like $75, and I really, really wanted it, but I can't afford it.
Yeah.
And the guy, I asked him if he was like into that kind of stuff, and the owner was like, no. Like, he just knows he has good shit and like prices it though because it is good.
Bastard.
But he like doesn't believe in any of it. And I was like, oh, do you like believe in this stuff? And he was like, no. And I was like, oh, it's kind of awkward. But he was selling it for $75, and then I ended up buying a copy off of Thrift Books for like $2 or something. It was like so fucking cheap, and it got to my house, and I can't even read it because it smells like cigarettes so bad.
What?
Yeah, it like gives me an instant headache. It like burns my nose.
I wonder if you could like odor eliminator spray it outside and just leave it
Yeah,
for like a day.
I wonder, because I'm like, how do you clean a book? The pages are yellow too. Like, that was sitting in someone's like personal library. Imagine the person who had it. Like, I literally cracked it and read a page, and I was like, headache, just like overwhelmed.
Secondhand nicotine high.
It was bad. Okay. Anyways, part 2, we left off. They were having super awesome sex, but something was about to happen that was going to kind of change the course of him and Crescent's relationship and also his life. It was gonna get crazier. And I think this is where people have a hard time like believing his story. Some people are just like, bro, this is getting a little out there.
It's where they fall off, yeah.
Sometimes, but like, that doesn't really bother me. Like, I think this part of the story is just as important, and it's just as believable.
I believe
too. I want to begin this episode with a little story that's not about David, but is related, and something I kind of just came across. And I thought that it was really interesting that it was related in general.
Okay.
So like I said, David Huggins is in the documentary The Hidden Hand. And in that same documentary, there is a man who speaks freely on camera while attending an abductee support group, which David Huggins is present for. This man's name is Posey Gilbert, and he had a childhood filled with bizarre occurrences as well. So Posey was born in 1952 in the Bronx, only 8 years junior to David Huggins. And he described his upbringing as one without belief in anything. His parents were skeptical people, and they always taught their children, quote, Peter Pan isn't flying, look for the strings. Like that kind of mindset.
Okay, jeez.
Right, I know. So, however, Posey, as well as his siblings, all had experiences with unexplained phenomena during childhood, but Posey's continued into adulthood. Why is Posey's relevant? Why is Posey's relevant? Why is Posey relevant to David's story? Well, when David's relationship with Crescent reemerged in the 1960s after moving to Manhattan, Posey was no more than 11 years old, and they lived no more than 10 miles apart, as the crow flies. And Posey tells one particular experience which would have many similarities to David's. So when Posey was a boy, his mother asked him to go upstairs to his sister's room. And when he opened the door, he could see 3 silhouettes in the dark. And the little figure suddenly jumped up in surprise. And he would say, it was as if I scared them. It was like they realized he can see us. And after they jumped up, the figures began to run around the room super fast in a blur. And according to Posey, they all converged on the window, which suddenly opened, but not physically. And behind the window was pure blackness, almost like a void. And he would say it was like looking down into a long black hole. And the 3 figures suddenly disappeared into the darkness, and he himself would feel a pull from the window. And in panic, he gripped to the side of his sister's bed frame in order to not follow the beings.
Sucking him through.
Yeah, like get sucked into the hole. And then before his eyes, the window flew shut, the glass transparent once again. And in a bit of shock and not sure how to react, he just went back downstairs. He would say in the group session, quote, I did what I normally did after any kind of weirdness. I just walked into the kitchen and said, Mother, how come when I walk into Teresa's room, there was little black men in there, and when they ran through the window disappeared and it turned all black, and I thought I was going to be sucked through the window, but then it went away and the window was normal again. And my mother just looked at me and she said what she always said. That's nice. Don't tell your father.
Yeah, I mean, happens to every kid.
Yeah. So Posey, along with many others, would consider this to be an encounter with a portal. And just like Posey, David was experiencing portals to unfamiliar places 10 miles away.
At the same time?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Not like exactly at the same time, but it's interesting that Posey's a boy and David's an adult, and they're both having experiences of portals. And this is happening in the city.
Yeah, that is. Maybe they're like trying to get to David, but they keep like
Oh my
overshooting
God,
a little bit.
Going to Posey.
And they're like, dang it.
Posey has other really, really cool stories too about seeing ghosts.
Oh.
Him and his brother, like seeing people. There was one story about like his brother had just gotten baptized and they were supposed to walk home and they had to walk like down a hill or up a hill. And when they left the church, they saw a man bleeding, walking up the hill, struggling to get there. And they just watched him like in fear because they're like little boys.
Yeah.
And the man like stopped and then he just like evaporated in front of them. And it was like in the street in the middle of the day, there were other people around. And he had like a bunch of experiences like that with his siblings. Posey's an interesting guy. He also believes that an alien tracking device was removed from his body. You know, I watched an interview with him that seemed a little bit like out there, like he wasn't doing very well, like mentally, but he had some pretty amazing stories. So we're talking portals.
Like Donnie Darko?
Exactly like Donnie Darko.
It's just like Donnie Darko.
It's just like Donnie Darko for real. I love, what's his name?
Jake Gyllenhaal?
Yeah.
I'm more of a Paul Dano man myself.
Yeah, I know. Paul Dano's all right. Yeah, he's got something going. He looks so English.
I don't think he looks English. I think he looks like a
Paul Dano.
like a deluxe twink.
Oh,
Like an aged up twink.
okay. I mean, I think he... Okay, so so I don't even know what to say. I just want to talk about portals, okay?
Okay.
So, portal talk. Portal love. One night, David woke up to see a shiny dot on the wall, no more than the size of a quarter. And David would feel a strange wave of energy come over him as if his consciousness was altered.
Okay.
However, David remains that he was totally conscious and clear-headed.
Okay.
His apartment grew darker as the dot grew larger, and it radiated a glowing bright light, but it did not blind him. Once completely open, the mantis walked through the ethereal doorway, and he was followed by two small grays and Crescent. She approached him, and he felt a warm, pleasant energy from her. He was like, oh, fuck, we're gonna fuck.
We're gonna fuck today.
And she sat on his bed and looked at him, smiling, and started cranking his shit. Mm-hmm. No, he's not cranking. She's not cranking.
Yet.
But they did rub heads. Oh, wait, yeah. She did start cranking his shit, actually.
Always ends with him getting his shit cranked.
Yeah, he is cranking. He's getting his crank shitted. He's getting his shit cranked. Bro.
He's cranking and shitting at the same time.
So they started rubbing heads and they began to have sex, which he believed to be the deepest and romantic lovemaking he had ever had with Crescent. And afterwards, he watched the doorway reopen and the grays pass through the threshold. The mantis remained stood near the put. The mantis remained standing near the portal as Crescent walked away from the bed, and she looked back at him smiling. And she said, if you would like to go, then go ahead. So David got up and he climbed through the portal. And in his renditions, it basically is just like going over like a fence, like a low fence. He just like lifts up a leg and like puts it on the other side and some like Truman Show shit. So David climbs through the portal, and the mantis and the crescent, he climbs through. The mantis and crescent follow him. He turns around, and he's looking at his dark room on the other side of the portal, and then the portal closes in front of him. And it's just a wall.
Trippy.
Super trippy. Just like his first experience being taken away as a child, he found himself in a large metal room, but this time he was naked. But he didn't feel embarrassed at all. Mm-hmm. And the room had a big window, like before, where he could see Earth far, far away, just like the one that the knob-headed man showed him. And all around him were beings. So there was the mantis and crescent and a bunch of little grays, but hairy guy was there too.
Well, hairy guy.
Hanging out. David doesn't remember much about the experience, but after this experience, to David's dismay, he did not see Crescent again for many, many weeks. So they had this beautiful lovemaking, right? She's like, you want to come check out my room? So he goes and he checks out the spaceship, basically. Mm-hmm. And then they like send him back through, and then she doesn't call him. She goes,
rude.
Yeah. And he's like, okay.
He's all backed up. He's blue-balled as fuck.
Yeah. Also, if you zoom in on this picture, she's touching his arm. She looks gorge. But if you go and you look down at the bottom, you can see hairy guy's face like super clearly. Uh-huh. And then there's a gray standing behind him. The juxtaposition and like the weirdness of this whole painting, like, and also just like the details of hairy man's face is like bizarre, because before he was just like a creature with no facial features, and this time he has like a nose and like a brow and a mouth that's like smile, like it's way more like in depth. And of course he just has like 2 yellow dots, but this is like my favorite painting, I think, because it's really just all white, and it's just a really bizarre image.
Is she holding her stomach?
No.
Okay.
Or maybe I think she's going like this.
Oh, she's just like gesturing at the portal. Okay, I was like, what is that?
And he looks confused.
Oh.
Everybody kind of looks confused. Even like hairy man is like, making a face. So anyway, after this, he didn't see her for many, many weeks. And in that absence, he was plagued with weird dreams that he wasn't able to decipher. So like in one of these dreams, he could see the side of a cliff with many openings on the side of it, like big holes or caves. Mm-hmm. And he said basically that it looked like a naturaling, like a natural cave system. Mm-hmm. And from these cave openings, he was watching UFOs fly in and out of them, almost like a UFO like parking lot.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. And then later on, David would have some experiences which he believes possibly took place in these caves. Yeah.
He needs to throw the I Ching.
Yeah. I think that there's a possibility when he went through the portal, they might have taken him to the cave system, and that's where he saw all the UFOs, and then they sent him back, and that's why he was dreaming of the UFOs. You know what I mean? So, but the UFO parking lot thing is like weird as fuck.
So in the weeks without Crescent, besides the weird dreams, David's life just carried on. But one day, she returned finally. But this reuniting was one of pure panic. David was painting in his studio on a quiet afternoon, and suddenly the portal opened up on his wall. Through the portal, he saw Crescent. She was frowning, and David knew she was very upset. She then said to him, "David, the baby is dying." David responded, "Baby? What baby?" She replied, "Your baby." And he cried out, "Show me my baby." Finally, Crescent showed him his baby. She stretched out her arms, and in her hands was a skinny little pale-skinned baby. The infant was not a human baby. It was something that looked more like Crescent. It had a human body with large eyes. The baby was dangling from her hands, and she was holding the weak little being from under its armpits, and it looked very unwell. Immediately, David yelled out to her to not hold the baby like that. In desperation, he told her she needed to cradle the baby in her arms. Crescent needed to nurture this baby, but it seemed as if she didn't know how. He rushed to come through the portal to help her, saying, "I want my baby." But Crescent told him he was not allowed to come through.
This was pretty, like, interesting. Like, the story of it all. The baby's dying.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if he was making it up, he could have gone a really different route of like, one day, Crescent came to visit me and she said, "Look, David, our baby." And I looked at him and I knew he was my baby. But there's, all this other stuff. But anyway, so he said he wants his baby. Crescent told him he was not allowed to come through the portal. But David was distressed, and he told Crescent if his baby was dying, he was going to cross the portal doorway no matter what.
He wanted that baby.
So that's my baby.
Well, and also, like, from the paintings and stuff, like, if you could imagine someone being like, "Hey, this is your baby," and they're just holding it by its arm, like
what the fuck?
Yeah, instinctually, even if it's not your baby.
Yeah, if you see someone dangling a baby, you're like, hey now.
Yeah, you're like, oh my God.
What are you doing to it?
Yeah.
So David says something odd after this. He claims that he ran and threw himself onto his bed, and then he suddenly falls asleep. He opens his eyes moments later, and he gets up and is able to cross through the portal, which is weird.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of comes down to, like, the metaphysical sense where, like, the first time he went through the portal, remember, he said that he felt himself change. Mm-hmm. And I think that in order for him to change, I think it's like a intense astral projection. I think going through portals, you have to be, like, in a different body.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Different state of consciousness, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how he knew to, like, just throw himself on the bed. "I'm going to come get my baby." Throws himself on the bed, falls asleep. And then he gets up immediately, like, goes. So
could have been instinctive. So he gets through the portal. But this time, he doesn't arrive in the metal room that he ended up in before. He traveled to a room that he believed was within the natural cave system, the one that he saw in his dreams.
yeah.
Upon his arrival, he realized that he was interrupting some kind of meeting. There was Crescent, Little Grays, 2 mantis beings, and the hairy guy. But to his surprise, there were other hybrid women present as well. It was not just Crescent. These other women were nude, with short black hair and faces identical to Crescent's. They were a surprise to David, but he was too upset to really care.
Yeah. I think he even says there were all these crescents there.
Yeah.
Like,
because they look just like her, yeah.
Yeah. I need to mention, because I forgot to write it in, all the other hybrid women that were there were Amazonian. Crescent is, like, about the same size as David, maybe a little bit taller.
So
sometimes.
they were bigger than Crescent.
They were, like, twice the size. They were ginormous.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amazons.
So a mantis came up to David, and he sternly asked him what he was doing there. David dropped to his knees and begged to hold his baby. The mantis eventually agreed to his wishes. Crescent brought the baby to David, and it looked lifeless. As soon as David touched the baby, he felt electricity. The baby's eyes lit up, and it started to move, and the baby made an immediate recovery. Crescent and the other large hybrid women were all happy and excited by this miracle. And then one of the mantis beings tells David, "Come with me," and David follows. The mantis led David to a room. The walls of this room were somewhat decorated with colorful shapes. David could see within the walls were hundreds of little containers. They were incubators, and each one held a little baby, just like the one that Crescent had. This room was a nursery. David was stunned.
I love that it's a nursery.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, you must stimulate the child with colorful shapes on the wall."
That's how monkeys work.
Yeah. And then they're just like picking it up and dangling it around, tossing it.
Yeah.
So there's all these babies in the room. David said, "Oh my God, whose babies are these?" Then his jaw dropped when the mantis told him, "They're your babies." A lot of fucking babies. And David was shocked. His first response was, "How am I going to send these kids to college?" And that's not a joke. That's what he said that he thought.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
If you look at the painting that he did of himself, it's the funniest
Funny
painting.
face.
It's the funniest painting of him he's ever done, I think.
I really like it.
Like, it's insanely funny.
Those are mine? I can afford this.
He's like, no fucking way.
Then the mantis told him that he had to hold every single one of the babies because they were all sick and they might die. They're like, oh, thank goodness, like you found out how to heal him. Listen, come look at the rest of them because we got
A lot.
there's a few.
There's
actually.
a few.
If I knew you could save them, we would have brought you in sooner. But according to the National Library of Medicine, without human touch, infants fail to thrive, and it's well known that long-term touch neglect can lead to weight loss, illness, eventually death. For example, in the 19th century, many institutionalized infants in the United States died from marasmus, a condition that means wasting away. In 1915, institutions reported that most infants under the age of 2 died from failure to thrive, which was linked to a lack of touch and affection.
This is fact. This is like medical fact. Like babies who don't get healed just die. Infants. Yeah.
If I don't hold my baby, my Zuzu, my kitty, I die.
Yeah, I was going to say you die.
Yeah, it causes death in me.
Me. Yeah, you. So it makes sense.
It's an actual statistic.
And I also kind of think, like, yes, the hybrid women in Crescent are holding babies, right? They're obviously not delicately holding them.
And they're not humans.
And they're not humans. And if they're part human, they might not live unless they're touched by a human, which makes sense. So David is being ordered to electrocute all these babies with his life force.
Zap those babies.
Get zapped, bitches. I didn't mean that.
And he did hold every single one of them.
There's
by the
like
way.
a lot.
Yeah, there's...
Literally dozens.
It's a long day. How weird and like emotionally draining that would be, I wonder. To be like, these are all my babies.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. David's experience as an abductee, being exposed to dozens and dozens of hybrid babies, is not that common, but it does happen to a small percentage of those who claim to be victims of abduction and reproductive examinations. Here's a quick example of something somewhat similar. Antonio Villas-Boas was a Brazilian farmer who claimed to have been abducted in 1957. During this abduction, blood samples were taken from him, and he was covered in a bluish clear gel. There's that goo again.
It's getting gooed.
Gooed, which dried on his skin. He was then seduced by a giant hybrid woman.
Amazon.
Imagine that. But she had platinum hair, red pubic hair, large blue eyes, and a human body, so somewhat different. Afterwards, the woman said nothing. She rubbed her belly, smiled, and pointed to the sky. Antonio knew she was telling him she was going to have a baby. Antonio went on to have more abduction experiences as well as weird things happening to his body. After one encounter, Antonio was returned home, but his penis was in pain.
Owie, my pee hurts. Oh, my penis. Oh, I just had sex with a giant woman. My pee.
I guess it hurts.
It hurts for a different reason in this case.
Oh, yes, I remember this. Yeah, when he examined himself, he discovered a long strand of hair from one of the women was wrapped tightly around the head of his penis, digging in, like tight.
Like tight.
Like imagine, like, you know how people put fucking rubber bands around watermelons?
Yeah.
Like tight.
Human hair, synthetic hair, like
It's not gonna happen.
I feel like human hair would just break.
Usually, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like his little soft pee-pee is just getting fucking like, he's about to get like castrated by this like weird
This strong hair.
Yeah, like fishing wire. Like it is disturbing. The thing that I also didn't really realize about Antonio is that he also says that the hybrid woman smiles.
Maybe they do, just to their partners, to be, you know, a little more welcoming. But yeah, Antonio did eventually come to the conclusion that his semen was being used to create hybrids. Back to David and holding all the babies. So David held all the babies and he passed his life source to them, and then they sent him back through the portal. And the next morning, David was so exhausted, like I said, so exhausted he couldn't even sit up in bed. He slept throughout the day, and that night he woke up suddenly only to see the mantis standing next to his bed. The mantis led him to a doorway which was different than the portals he had seen before. This doorway was a square and shined with a pure radiating glow. The mantis told David to step into the light. David was scared, but the mantis insisted. David stood in the light and absorbed the pure glow for a few minutes. The next thing he knew, he was sent back to his bed. And the next morning, David felt wildly invigorated, energetic, and healthy. This feeling lasted for many weeks. Shortly after the energy therapy, quote unquote, David was unexpectedly visited by a familiar being. Guess what? It's the hairy guy.
It's how we met. It's how we met again.
He's, yeah, you tired?
Harry
Here
Man
I
is
am.
just showing up at the weirdest fucking times. I don't even know. I feel like his appearances are not necessarily uniform.
It's just kind of whenever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Harry Guy's here. He appears in David's apartment one afternoon, just while David's painting. And Harry Guy walked right up to him casually and said, "David, can we use your body?" And David, without really thinking about it, said, "Yes, you can use it as much as you like." Harry Guy seemed giddy getting this permission.
I just imagine him being like,
Yeah.
like jumping up and down. I don't know why, but
Well, he seems like a giddy little imp. He's like a little hairy imp boy.
he's like an imp for sure.
Yeah, and then he scurries out of the room and he vanishes in the hallway. And David is just sitting there and he's like, why are you asking me now?
Yeah.
Like they've been using his body this whole time.
They've been using
So
my body
strange.
since I was
since
17.
I was 17. Yeah. Really odd, but I guess better late than never, ?
Yeah. And also I found this other painting of Harry Man, but he straight up has boobs.
That's not boobs, they're pecs.
Those are boobs. And he's making a weird face. He's making like
It's one of the cutest pictures of the hairy man.
I kind of wonder if maybe this was like he does a painting of the owl, right? Mm-hmm. So I wonder if maybe this is his secondary memory of the owl painting that he did. Because when he was a kid, he thought it was an owl. And I think maybe this was more accurate. It was Harry Guy watching him. He looks way bigger than normal too.
He does. I mean, maybe he's grown up.
Maybe that's Harry
It has been
Guy's
years.
mom.
Harry mom. Aw.
Harry mom.
If you enjoy our podcast, please rate, review, and consider becoming a patron by visiting patreon.com/radiograve. Your patronage and support helps us continue to make content for you. You can stay up to date with us by following our Instagram account @RadioGravePodcast, and be sure to tell all your spooky friends about us too. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
So Harry Guy is like, thank God we can use your body. We're finally getting permission to do that. But after the visit from Harry Guy, there was an absence from Crescent.
Always a sad time.
Yeah. And David wasn't sure why, but he felt like guilty, like maybe it was his fault. Mm-hmm. But David had to continue living his life on Earth and without Crescent. So a month after this, David actually had to move into a new apartment. And during the first 3 months in his new home, David had no encounters whatsoever. So after the month in his old apartment and the 3 months in his new apartment, David would receive a message from what he thought was the other side. So one evening, David was listening to the radio while painting.
Radio Grave?
Mm-hmm. Nice. Radio Grave. And then suddenly a static buzz broke the broadcast. And within the static, a voice came through and it said, "We know where you are."
Men in Black?
Yeah, I don't know. But it's like Crescent and like all of those beings were so fine with coming in to see him. Harry Guy had just been in his apartment, had just appeared.
You're like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, just to be like, hi. And now it's like they have to communicate with him through the radio, which I feel like is strange. But obviously he had never experienced something like that. And he questioned, did other people listening to the same radio station hear this cryptic message too? Like maybe it had nothing to do with him. Maybe the voice was from the beings. Like he doesn't know. So no matter how hard he tried to rationalize it, he eventually just came to accept that it was for him and that it was talking to him.
Okay.
And they were going to follow him wherever he went, like they always had. So after the radio message, David fell into a depression, a really, really deep depression. Postpartum. But it was more than just him being depressed and sad. He just was overwhelmed by this guilt. He just felt guilty and he had anxiety and it just got worse and worse and worse. So one night while undressing, David was triggered into an unprompted meltdown. He was just getting ready for bed and then all of a sudden he just started having an intense meltdown. And he heard a voice in his head repeating over and over again, "Everything is fine. It's all right. Everything is fine. It's all right." But he mechanically took off all of his clothes, totally butt naked, and he threw himself onto the bed crying hard. he started having these thoughts, and he just started talking out loud without even thinking about what he was saying. And he kept saying, the baby died. The baby died. Oh my God, it's all my fault. It's all my fault. And the voice would echo in response, everything is fine. It's all right. And as we'll like come to discuss in just a minute, I mean, this was like his whole world was ending in this moment. So if you can like go into this segment, like listener, go into this segment thinking about how he's saying, it's my fault that my baby died. Think about if you had killed your own baby, like that guilt and that sadness, those suicidal thoughts that would come with that. That's the way he's feeling. It's more than just he's upset and he's crying. So he's laying on his bed and he felt himself change. And once again, he was inside the cave system. And he was surrounded by a bunch of beings. There was the small grays and the mantis beings. There were also 2 hybrid women there, the giant hybrid women. And he's just screaming and sobbing, and he's throwing his hands up in the air, and he's barely able to hold himself up. He's inconsolable. And the voice continued to reassure him, like, everything is all right. And it just like wasn't working. And he's looking around him, and he realized that all of the other beings, like, they had twisted faces of distress. Like they didn't know what to do. And he felt like maybe his meltdown of emotions was like very upsetting to them, obviously, but probably very scary.
Yeah, they don't understand what's going on. They're like, why are you acting like that?
And suddenly he realized why he felt responsible for his baby's death. A memory came to him. So he recalls holding a baby during the life force sessions, right? From months and months before.
The zapping.
Mm-hmm. And he suddenly felt scared. And he remembered that he had accidentally dropped one of his babies. And after he dropped it, one of the hybrid women came and she rushed and she picked up the baby from the floor and she carried it away quickly. But it still seemed like it was sick and weak. And David was worried he had really hurt the baby. In that moment, one of the giant women reassured him that everything was fine. It's all right. Like the baby is fine. Once this memory came to him, it kind of made everything worse. Because how could he have forgotten that he hurt his baby? You know, that's kind of like what he says. He's like, not only did I get scared of my own baby, but I dropped it on the floor and I never healed it and it died. And then I forgot about it. And the 2 giant women ran towards David and they restrained him. And they were really strong.
They're huge.
They're huge and they're super strong. And they forced him to the floor, but he didn't fight back. He just collapsed. Finally, Crescent entered the room and she was all upset, and Crescent came to his side and she asked him, David, what is the matter? And David said, my baby died. I was holding it, then got scared and dropped it. It's all my fault. And Crescent responded, oh, David, your baby didn't die. And when David looked up, he saw a hybrid woman cradling a healthy, happy baby. And relieved, David ran to his baby, and the beings watched as his tears of sadness transformed into tears of joy. And in retrospect, he remembers them seeming as if they were frustrated by this, like especially the mantis beings in the grays. The grays who are generally unemotional and mechanical, and the mantis beings who think that he's just a dumb, half monkey human. Just being like, oh, really? You were that on the brink of having to die for this situation, and then now you're that you're easily happy. Consolable. So the grays and the mantises aside, the Amazonian hybrid women were fascinated by this, and they were fascinated by David, and they wanted him.
Sexually?
Yeah.
Oh my.
David was obviously embarrassed by his emotional outburst, and he apologized to all of the beings in the room because he knew that some of them were frustrated and confused. And everything seemed calm, and the hybrid women approached David, and they were smiling and purring, and they were like, it's okay, David. Everything is okay. Everything's fine.
Don't worry.
Oh, David. And the women began to show body language that is basically like universal for like, we're gonna fuck now. And they like grabbed their boobs and they were like jiggling their titties around. And David was like, oh, they want to have sex.
Is that a universal body language?
I don't know. I mean, to him, that's what he said. He's just like, well, why else would they be doing it? They're like purring and they're like
Grabbing their tatas.
they're like, David, it's okay. Like, it's okay, David.
That's them grabbing their boobs.
Literally, they're all like that.
Creepy.
Yeah, I mean, and like literally, he was just on the brink of killing himself, right? And then he has a baby presented to him, and then he has tears of joy, and then he feels embarrassed, and he's like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. And the women are like, it's okay. So do you want to fuck? It's just like a fucking roller coaster, I think, for David. So, and the women turned to one of the mantis beings, and they were asking him, oh, can David stay? Like, pretty please, with sugar on top, can David stay? And the mantis was like super stern and clear, and he said, no. No, David must go back.
You Amazonians are getting out of control right now.
Yeah. And they were disappointed, and and David apologized that he wasn't allowed to stay. However, the mantis is a smart being, and he had other plans for David. And the women were going to get what they wanted, because basically David was destined to be their stud now.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Scary to me.
I don't know. Maybe it's because the women were really into him. Maybe it's because they were like, oh my God.
He has emotions, you guys.
He has emotions.
So ethnic.
They all wanted...
Because he's like a minority to them.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, exotic.
Emotions? Exotic? I don't know. And the mantis is like, okay, all my women want to fuck this guy. They can have him. We're going to stud him out. We're going to crank his pussy till there's nothing left. Oh, everybody wants my seed. I'm special. But he doesn't really say it like that, but it is sort of like...
Weird Star Trek fan fiction.
Yeah. It's like, what is it called? Like the Mary Sue. Yeah. Like, I'm so special and important. I'm the most important person in the room.
I'm destined.
I'm destined to be a stud.
It's my fate to give these huge-titted Amazonian women my seed.
Literally.
I'm the chosen one.
He's like, I'm the chosen one. I get to have constant sex with these giant women. It reminds me of like the Futurama Amazon episode.
Yeah.
Where they're going to be, it's death by snoo snoo. Mm-hmm. And so I think David's going to just have life by snoo snoo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he thinks they're all hot because they all look like...
He's like, oh my God, it's so many of my girlfriend.
Literally. But they're just bigger, which is also hot. Some dudes are like, I just want a big woman. I'm going to climb her like a tree. And I think that's probably what David was thinking. More like they were going to just ride him to oblivion. Anyway.
Damn. Death by cowgirl. So the mantis decided that David could not stay. However, he wasn't ready to let him leave yet. The mantis and the hybrid women led David to another room. This room was cozier, with curtains hanging around, covering a few of the walls. A raised surface was in the middle of the room, and it was a bed. This room had even more Amazonian women. A room full of giant crescents. This is fantasy. He's so ready.
Literally.
But there were some differences with these hybrid women. Like stated before, they were far larger and stronger than David. And just like Crescent, they obviously were wearing black wigs. And these wigs were unkempt and askew on their heads. They were usually sitting sideways or too far back or too far forward. Like, they just like threw them on.
Which is like a Men in Black thing for sure. Like, they just don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, you're not tricking me.
I know I have to wear this thing, but does it matter if it's back? I don't know. Is it backwards?
Yeah. Like, Crescent's got a like lace front.
Oh, hell yeah.
And like she's polished, and these are like Party City, like black, fucking like
the little page boy wigs.
Yeah. Like
they're like $9.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
with the bangs and everything. Yeah.
Spirit Halloween overstock.
Literally.
In all of David's renditions of Crescent, she has pubic hair, but the Amazonians in this room did not.
Hair seems like an afterthought. Mm-hmm. Like, are they going to wear pubic wigs.
That's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
They might.
But these ones don't have hair anywhere. So I don't know.
They only had enough for the head wigs.
Yeah.
Like,
And they
forget the pubes. We're just going to get hair wigs. So
could you imagine pube wigs that were like upside down or like sideways? Is that too far?
one of them has them like on their belly button.
Like, yeah. Like they just don't get it.
Like, this looks normal.
They're like, this is what human pubic hair looks like, right? And he's like,
Okay.
yeah, sure.
I don't care. Let me in that hole. Basically, they were like unpolished versions of Crescent.
Right.
All the Crescent things, but not as good.
Or just, I think like they were sexy and they had bodies like her. But I think that he preferred Crescent to have pubic hair. And like these women were not necessarily made to be his preference.
So he's in the room with all the Amazonians, and the Mantis tells David he's going to have to give all of them babies. Like it's his duty, it's his job. David was asked to show these women how to make love like a human, how to not be limited to just hot, steamy fucking or business-like sex meetings. He wasn't prepared for this information or this task. He was not prepared to have sex with all of these hybrid women. They were very hypersexual and eager, like they were programmed that way, like made for fucking. And their lack of shyness was very intimidating. He's like, these things are fucking animals, dog.
Yeah.
These ladies are crazy.
Yeah.
And David had just had the meltdown of the century, and so he felt a little bit of like emotional whiplash, but David felt like he wasn't allowed to say no. And the issue wasn't consent. It was that David didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So he knew what he had to do.
Yeah, he didn't want to be like, no, I'm not having sex with you. Because
like,
they
okay.
they wanted him so bad. And they were like, oh, David, please, can David stay? Please fuck me, David. David, fuck me.
He's like, I can't let them down.
Yeah, and he's like, well, I don't want to say no because what if I hurt their feelings? I'll fuck them, but do I have to?
I'll feel bad if I don't.
I don't know if I can get hard. That is what the continued issue is in this situation.
Yeah. So David tells the Mantis, I do like hugging and kissing. And a voice says back, show us, David, as two hybrid women approach him purring. But an audience had filled into the room at this point. There were about a dozen grays just watching them. And David would ask if he and the women could have some privacy because he was feeling self-conscious with all the creepy little dudes around them. And many of the grays did file out, but some just like turned away.
They're turned around.
Yes, privacy. Just turn my back. It's like, you're in the room still, dude.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. They're like, oh, privacy. Sorry, I'm not looking.
Yeah. He's like romantic person, right? And there's like an audience. They're like,
yeah, there's a lot of people.
They're like trying to crank his shit. It's like a whole thing.
He says, ladies, please.
Even in the painting that he did, there's a lot of fucking people.
There's a lot of people in the room.
It says, but everybody's looking on. Can't we have a bit of privacy? Is what he wrote down there at the bottom.
And so some of them turn their heads slightly.
They're
put a book in front of their faces.
They're all curious.
But okay, so some of them left and some turned away. And basically it left the Mantis watching them and then the hybrid women. And then David finally got a boner. So he took one of the hybrid women by her hand and he made love to her as a human would. He kissed her, stroked her, he was gentle and passionate. He had intimate sex with her the same way he had with Crescent for many years. In fact, everything he knew about sex was all taught to him by Crescent. And the hybrid women, Mantis beings, and Greys watched and learned from this session. After they were finished, David and the woman cuddled together, but this didn't last long. David began to feel himself change. He looked up at the ceiling to see an intense yellow light appear. He realized it was emanating from a hole. It didn't hurt his eyes. David felt himself pulling upwards toward the hole, and then he passed out. David woke up in his bed back on Earth, and he heard a voice repeating over and over, the baby is fine, the baby is all right, and David was so relieved. 2 days later, David came home to find Crescent and the Mantis waiting for him. He could see the familiar round portal on the wall, and it was open. It was time to have sex with more giant hybrid women.
Working that 9 to 5. Yeah, 9 to 5 at the hardware store and then 5 to 9 a.m.
At the portal.
At the fucking portal fucking.
It's It's a lot for one man.
Literally.
But he undressed and he followed them through the portal. He said, I got work to do. This is my job. And this was the beginning of an era for David. And for many years to follow, he would have sexual relations with countless hybrid women. He would willingly give up his semen. He would transfer his life force to the babies. And he would teach the hybrid women how to be gentle mothers.
To his babies, yeah.
Yeah. Most importantly, David would also be granted a form of permission by the mantis and the knobhead man. He was going to be exposed to the bizarre, unfiltered dimension of Crescent's secret world.
He was more than just a human that they were having sex with now.
Yeah, they're like, okay, buddy, let's move you up another level.
So like the chapter before, having sex with the giant women became the norm, right? But sex with Crescent began to happen less because, he was so preoccupied.
He's like, I'm fucking too many alien bitches.
Literally.
Crescent, I don't have time for you. I'm
Well,
literally populating.
She didn't seem to mind,
good.
because they still had a true connection and relationship, unlike the others.
They had a special thing still.
They were still special. Like they knew it was business. And he would even say that it was pleasurable. He liked having sex with the hybrid women. He said, even though they were a lot bigger than me and stronger than me.
I like being thrown around
Literally.
by Amazonian.
I also put in a painting of one of the hybrid women he painted, jiggling her tits.
It's a huge canvas too. It looks like it might be maybe 8 foot tall canvas.
An 8 foot tall canvas, I think.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It looks like it would be like life size ish almost.
He has one particular memory which is a little bit more intense. So he remembers being escorted by 3 hybrid women to the familiar curtain room, which literally is like Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird. A handful of other hybrid women were waiting for him there. And they were there to observe, basically, and learn. And he was led to a table where a small bowl had been placed. And the 3 women began to caress and kiss him in front of the audience. And soon they were cranking his shit. And then he ejaculated into the bowl. Do you like the pictures that I put down there?
Of his cum being extracted?
Yeah.
Yep. I love it. And all these women on him, he's like, he looks like he's drowning in it. Sir, it's going to be okay. They're like, this is how you extract.
Right. And I have a theory about this specific situation. And I think that this sample was used as like pure DNA. Because I think that this straight DNA is not used for procreation. Whereas like he's splooging into all these women, right?
But they want just like a strict sample from him.
Yes. So David is asked if there are male equivalents to Crescent in an interview. And he says, I can't say. I think I've seen males. I have no idea. There does seem to be a faint memory of other males, but I don't remember too much.
Yeah, I guess he wouldn't need to.
Yeah.
It doesn't concern him.
Right. He has one particular memory which is a little funny, actually. And he would say, I remember one time one of the females was walking past me and the hair was not on right. She took it off and I was taken aback by that. And obviously, David didn't want to be rude. So in order to make her not feel like embarrassed or self-conscious, he would say to her, should I shave my head? And this was his way to let her know he wasn't deterred by her big bald head.
So I can look like you kind of shit. Yeah.
And he still thought that she was beautiful. So David spent lots of time with his supposed hybrid children during this period too, giving them life force, whatever. And he would later confirm that it appeared that these babies had male and female organs. There were boys and girls.
Okay. They didn't have both. It was just...
No.
Okay.
Like in all of his renditions, he shows them not having genitals.
But they did.
But they did. They had human genitals.
Okay.
And some of them were girls and some of them were boys. David recalls one memory of performing an example of breastfeeding on one of the hybrid women. So he is
He just wants to suck titty.
He's sucking titty, right? He's sucking titty. And he says that this was to show the babies how to breastfeed and possibly show like the hybrid women like what breastfeeding is.
Yeah.
But he doesn't say anything about any breast milk coming out. And also like they're not human women.
Yeah.
Like, do they
Probably
breastfeed?
not compatible. Yeah.
No. So I think that maybe it was more to do with like helping the babies connect to their mothers, because breastfeeding is like a human thing.
Yeah.
Like, obviously. So maybe he's like, well, if the babies breastfeed, maybe it'll make them feel like that's a human thing to do.
Yeah.
But he is also like straight, just like sucking titty. And if you look below, when his art was in a gallery, he painted a rendition of him sucking titty, and he's laughing at his own painting of him sucking titty.
Yeah, he's laughing and pointing at his own painting, which is great.
Like, genuinely. Like
I was sucking titty.
I took a screenshot of this while I was watching the documentary because
Nice.
it's so funny.
It is funny.
Yeah. And they're like, what's so funny? And he's like, the expression on my face. Anyways, in another interview, he's asked what the babies survived on because they weren't breastfeeding.
Yeah.
And David talks about a mysterious goo that was fed to the babies. And one time he ate some out of curiosity. And he says, I remember eating some dark chocolate substance. It was like chocolate pudding. There was an odd taste in my mouth the next morning. And after I had a glass of water, it was gone.
I wonder what it is.
I don't know. Sustenance
They're like,
paste?
we
or-
made it chocolate so the babies like it.
Yeah, I don't know. And he's like, it tasted weird. So he's working with the mothers. He's taking care of the babies. And then he's also experiencing other things. He's inside this like special dimensional world. He's seeing things and talking to beings that he never dreamt that he would come into contact with, right? So David would come into contact with something I think pretty peculiar, and I wanted to add it in. It's really interesting because it also is like connected to another experience by someone else. He would fall asleep one night and he would wake up not necessarily going through the portal or in the cave where the babies were, but he woke up and he was floating in midair. And he remembers floating and arriving in a room that he knew was underground. He didn't say that it was in the cave system. He said it was underground. And he was in the presence of a giant golden bird with shining feathers. And before David knew it, the bird burst into flames. And the flames were so intense that David believed that he was going to catch on fire.
Oh, wow.
The fire burned out really fast, and it left just a pile of ashes. And out of the ashes crawled a giant dark-colored caterpillar.
This almost sounds like a dream.
Yeah, right? It's really weird and like elaborate. But in Raymond Fowler's 1979 book, The Andreessen Affair, he includes a transcript of a similar experience from a woman named Betty Luca. And Betty Luca also drew her own recovered memories from her abduction encounters in great detail. And from Fowler's book, one of these drawings included a time in which Betty had seen a giant celestial bird that she also interpreted as a phoenix because it had burst into flames right in front of her, just like David's. And when the fire burned out, it left a pile of ashes in which a large clay-like worm emerged. And she called it a clay worm. And 3 days later, Betty would once again see the phoenix, and she knew the worm had transformed back into the phoenix.
Interesting.
Yeah. It should also be noted that celestial birds are not something unique throughout history, and it is a figure that is ancient. Giant, powerful birds, not just the phoenix, have been considered to be deeply connected to creationism. And this is especially recognized in Chinese and North American indigenous tradition. The phoenix is also prevalent in Egyptian, Greek, and Persian mythology. In Christianity, the phoenix is a symbol of resurrection. It has been interpreted as a form of Christ. And it also has appearances in some Euro-paganism, but this is like overshadowed by religion. So I couldn't really like quickly find anything about it. In Betty Luca's testimony, her hypnotism testimony, she asks the phoenix if the phoenix is Christ. She said, "Are you Jesus? Are you Christ?" And it like didn't want to respond, I think. It didn't respond clearly. I think it just said, like, we chose you.
Inferring that it's some kind of high power,
Yeah.
which is cool.
Yeah. So sometime after this encounter with the Phoenix, David was visited by a gray in his home, just like Hairy Guy. And the gray was there to give him something. Just like the fucking baby in the tube, he gave him a book. And
Okay, that's a little more pleasant.
Right. But when he opened the book, the pages were a luminous white and they were totally blank. And the more he looked through the book, images and diagrams began to appear and disappear. And the next day, the book was not where he had left it. And David knew that the gray had probably taken it with him when he left. It wasn't a gift. He was just showing it to him. Yeah. And the only symbol he remembers was a circle with a cross through it, like the zodiac symbol. Not to bring up Betty Luca again, but she also had been exposed to images and symbols, but she remembered a lot of them, and she drew a lot of them. So this is something that actually kind of made me feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
Amongst all the fucking and like none of that shit bothered me, but this made me feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
Physically. So the next meeting David had with an extraterrestrial was with a gray who he thinks may have been the one with the book. And maybe even the one that had showed him the baby in the jar.
Okay.
Or the tube. So this time, he and the gray were totally alone in a sterile room like the ones from the UFO. And the gray handed him a strange, transparent looking bag, like a plastic bag. And something was folded up inside of the bag like clothing. And then he realized that it was not clothing. It was a gray alien. Physically, it was a gray alien. And the being, the alien inside of the package opened its eyes and its mouth and it began to move.
Ew.
Yeah. And in David's rendition, it shows the being with like a smile on its face, which is even creepier. And it was, according to him, tapping and patting on the inside of the bag. Like I'm in the bag. Like,
yeah.
Which just, it fucking is just like disturbing to me. I don't know why. So David gave it back to the gray immediately. And he was like, I'm never touching this ever again.
He's like, oh, get that away from me.
Like the same thing with the baby in the tube.
Yeah.
Like, it's just weird. Like, why are the grays doing this? They're like, you want to see the most terrifying thing in the world? Here. So the gray explained that the being inside the bag was basically a body covering or suit for the grays.
So they don't necessarily look like that.
They don't necessarily look like that.
Interesting.
We don't know what they look like underneath. That's just the suit that they wear. So he was featured in a gallery way later when he's painting, when he's an old man. And the painted alien, the packaged alien, which is the name of that painting, was on display, but it was accidentally damaged. And while he was repairing it, he asked himself in his head, do they still use these bodies? And that night, David dreamt that he was with several alien beings that were very human looking. And all David remembers is one of the beings answering his question, saying, we have new bodies now. Isn't that weird? And like we talked about in our very first Men in Black files, when allegedly Albert Bender gets taken to Antarctica and the Men in Black turn into their true form, which is the Flatwoods Monster.
Oh, yeah.
And they're saying, oh, this is our form. We just wear these like human suits, which is like, bro, what are you saying? And then David Huggins is like looking, it's just, I can't. Anyway, so sometime in the early 70s, David was visited by Crescent in a dream, and she had a message for him. She told David they were going to be leaving him alone for a while, and that all their contact would cease. She told him they would return on August 17th, 1987. Until then, Crescent told David he had to forget everything. And after that night, the beings did not return, and David forgot everything. But in the back of his head, he always remembered the date, August 17th, 1987.
He's like, oh, something's going to happen that day? something I'm excited for, that I'm waiting for.
He knew that it was an important date, but he didn't know why.
Yeah, he knew something was coming. So David, without his memory, just carried on. He finished art school. He got a good job. He met a young woman named Janice. Janice was also an artist, and her specialty was in mosaics.
Which is so cool.
Yeah, mosaic is dope. They married and eventually had their son Michael, who seems like a pretty decent guy.
Totally
from
normal.
the interview. Very normal dude. He's like, yeah, this stuff just happened to my dad. Like, it's just a thing. It's fine.
He says something kind of like, it doesn't matter if I believe it or not. Like, my dad like had these experiences. They're his experiences. I can't denounce or prove or disprove anything.
Yeah, he's like, it's not. He seems almost like it's none of my business kind of a thing.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, this stuff happened to my dad.
Like, he believes him, but he's like, you know.
Yeah, it doesn't affect him. Mm-mm. And I think he said that. He said that it's never affected his life.
No.
Which is good.
Yeah.
I'm glad for that.
Yeah.
So they had Michael, their son, and the years flew by, and the year 1987 was approaching. And he began to think more about the important date, but he just didn't know why. The new year came, the seasons changed, and one day he was driving and listening to the radio. He was listening to a show about the Mayan calendar and the harmonic convergence, which the harmonic convergence was the world's first synchronized global peace meditation. It coincided with a perfect alignment of solar system planets in the mid-August of 1987. So a very, like, kind of a big...
It was like a big deal. It was like a very third eye event.
Yeah,
like
hippy-dippy shit.
Woo-woo kind of hippy-dippy that kind of stuff.
The planets are aligned and we are going to meditate
Yeah.
all across the planet.
Yeah.
David wasn't really interested in that, but he was still listening to it. So the program began to mention the special date, 8/17/87. David realized this was only a couple months away. Without surprise, on the night of August 17th, David had a dream. He dreamt of an object descending from the sky. It landed, and a woman walked out of the object toward David. It was Crescent. This dream of Crescent should have been one of great relief and happiness, but after the dream of Crescent, David's life changed in the worst way possible. David became very depressed. He was despondent, sometimes crying for no reason, hopeless. He began to feel distance from others and isolated. He had no drive to do anything at all. He had no solace in painting or watching movies. And there was something missing from his life, and that something had been taken from him. David would say, I was just a walking bowl of jello. Along with this depression came extreme anxiety. He always felt as if he was being watched. He was unable to sleep. He woke up in the middle of the night filled with fear. He would walk laps around his house in search of prowlers at all hours. He would peek into closets and under furniture. He felt like there were people even following him on the street.
All very obvious symptoms of abduction victims.
Yeah, totally. I've heard a lot about the like hopelessness and isolation feeling, even though you don't know why. And I've heard a ton about the anxiety of thinking someone's in your house, someone's watching you. It's like
Someone's outside
because it's
following
not
you.
unfounded. Yeah.
Yeah.
David was beside himself. He didn't know what to do. But one day, while walking alone, David crossed paths with a bookstore. And he felt compelled to check it out, as we all do when we come upon a bookstore. And he picked a book which just drew him in. It was called Intruders, The Incredible Visitations at Copley Woods by Bud Hopkins. And he bought the book. As he walked home, he flipped through the pages. He came upon a chapter that caught his eye, titled Other Women, Other Men. He immediately began to read this chapter. His brain opened up and he was beginning to remember. And the memories were very clear. Some of these memories were from as early as the first summer it all began. It just like unlocked the shit.
Yeah, he's like on the street, like, like information is getting like fucking, yeah.
Yeah. And David would say, quote, memory upon memory came flooding back. It was image upon image, and they wouldn't stop. I'm reading, and I think, oh God, this is the woman I never told anyone about. I didn't know what to do with it. I was so scared.
I was going to say something about Bud Hopkins because he read that book by Bud Hopkins.
Hopkins.
And Bud Hopkins was actually kind of like prolific. He worked with a lot of people who claimed to be abduction victims. He was a ufologist. He worked with Dr. John Mack, who was very important figure in hypnotism and also like abduction advocate, believer. But Bud Hopkins was not a psychiatrist. He was not like a doctor. He was just a ufologist, I think. And he read his book and he ended up meeting with him once. And he showed Bud Hopkins his art, especially the painting of the white of him looking into his room through the portal. And I guess Bud asked something like, so what is this? Is this a mirror? And he tells him, no, it's a portal. I'm on the ship and I'm looking into my room. That's a portal. And I guess Bud just was sort of like, okay. Like kind of brushed him off as being like that was a crazy concept. I find it very interesting that David's story is so believable. He is such a believable person. He's not quack. He's not woo-woo. He makes amazing art. And for some reason, Bud Hopkins like kind of brushed him off in a weird way. And in this interview, this was like the Love and Saucers interview at one of the showings that was put up by the Love and Saucers YouTube. He says, that's all I really have to say about Bud Hopkins. I never really got anything from that man. Kind of saying like Bud Hopkins like wasn't interested in talking to me, which is crazy. Like these are the kind of people that Bud Hopkins talks to.
Right.
He specializes with abduction victims. A lot of people think that Bud Hopkins was also like a fraud. Like he was very much so like a sensationalist. But he did do a lot of stuff. And he wrote a lot of really like interesting books. But I think that maybe David was just either too out there for him or maybe it wasn't scary enough. I don't know. Like, isn't that interesting and weird?
It is weird. David remembering his experiences made things worse. He was not able to process any of it at all. He questioned his purpose in life and his existence. What were they? Why me? David's reality was slipping through his fingers. Maybe Crescent became aware of David's mental anguish and suffering, because it was not long after that, David was taken away for a visit.
David fell asleep, and when he opened his eyes, he was in a familiar room. All around him were the alien beings, the giant women, the tall, knob-headed man, the mantis, and all the small grays. And of course, Crescent was there. And David realized that he was part of a very important meeting. During this meeting, the tall, knob-headed man and the mantis said, "Let David do paintings." And when David woke up the next morning, he felt the urge to paint, but was too afraid. 3 weeks passed before he built up the nerve to paint his very first piece. And that night, David had the most restful and peaceful sleep he ever had in his life. His work brought him peace of mind, but it also became concerning to those closest to him. So before I move on to Janice, I want to kind of just say what I thought about the let David do paintings thing. David was a really, really important figure, right? In their world, at least with being a stud and them taking his DNA, them taking his DNA and them like, X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And because of this, he obviously started to fall into emotional turmoil, mental illness. I think that they thought that he was going to kill himself. I think that he was getting to the end of his rope, being like, why do I even exist? Yeah. What is my purpose? I don't even matter. I think that they knew that if he got the memories out, painted them at least, because he was a painter, I think that they were like, let him do it. Yeah. This is the only way we can save him. Because who knows? Like, I don't know the finality of death. I don't think anyone does. And it's like, if the Phoenix is a creator, or if any of these beings are creators, like, what would death be? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know either. Yeah. But it seemed like if he was going to die and then just go to space and be with them,
they probably wouldn't have cared. Yeah.
They probably wouldn't have cared if he had died. But maybe, I don't know, hell exists.
Oh my God.
I just wanted to mention that because I always thought it was weird that they suddenly were like, hey, you want to paint? Like, I think it was deeper than that. But yeah, so moving on. When it came to his family, specifically his wife, Janice, he would say, Janice always knew there was something different about me. But after the paintings arrived, she believed something was very wrong with him. And David knew that his marriage was fried. It had been fried for years, like from the Depression. And then the weird paintings he was doing now of him having sex with aliens. So he knew he had to talk to her about it, tell her the truth. And he told her about how his experiences began when he was just a little boy. And he believed that they were alien beings. He was an abductee. He admits he had sexual encounters as well before they were married. He's like, I never cheated on you. This was way before we were married and had Michael. This is something that's above me and out of my control. Yeah. Like it's been happening my whole life. Please understand. And David didn't get very far with her. Janice shut it down. Janice told him she didn't want to hear it. She told him that he was crazy. And it was very quickly after this that they got a divorce. David was forced to move out of the house into his own place. And at the time, David's son was 5 years old. And he just didn't take it well, like at all. Like it was too much. So Janice ended up asking David to move back into the house in order to co-parent. And they raised Michael together, but they never got back together. And he still lives there. Yeah. You know, like they never really stopped living together. I think that even if David had to live on his own, he would have been fine. I don't think that he would have ended up homeless or, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, he's a very functional guy.
So functional. And I think that like, it's so nice of his ex-wife to be like, I care more about like our son than, I think that she really loved him. I think that she still loves him. I think that she just couldn't like cope with that. If she thought he was a pervert and a freak and a crazy person, I don't think she would have
let him live in the house with the son
and co-parent. Yeah. Like, I think that she was like, I just can't hear. I don't want to hear it. Don't ever talk to me about it ever again. Yeah. She's never participated in anything either. She's never spoke publicly about it. She refuses to, which is understandable. So out of Janice's eyesight, David continued to paint. And with the help of his art therapy, he began to recall more strange memories and dreams. So his painting was just never ending.
Yeah, because he had so much.
Yeah. And with the help of his art therapy, one of the ones he remembers is one that he believes is from the night that Crescent returned in 1987, right before his depression began. And he remembers sitting with Crescent and they were talking. And she seemed really happy to see David, and David was happy to see her. And he knew Crescent was getting ready to tell him something very important. And David knew she was going to bring him closure. Like, hey, I'm back and I'm finally ready to tell you like why we've been gone and also what we've been doing with your seed this whole time and the purpose of this. And he believes that she did tell him, but he can't remember.
That's fair.
Yeah. And then David would recover a memory where he was taken to a gathering and the room was full of human people all sitting on the floor. And he was like just sitting amongst them. And they were all just like him. But they were all different ages and races from all over the world.
Were they all men?
They were men and women.
Okay.
And children and old people, everyone. And in the middle of the room was Crescent. And she was sitting on a chair and she was just talking to the group. But there are no specifics about what she was saying. I don't think that he was able to remember. So that's interesting too, because he had never seen other humans, real humans, ever.
In these other, like, planes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in 1991, David had a very vivid and emotional dream. There was a very bright light that appeared to him, and he knew that it was an opening to another place. He didn't necessarily say that it was a portal, but he said that it was an opening to another place. And from the light, Hairy Guy stepped into the room, and following Hairy Guy was David's mother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they connected, and David told his mother that he loved her. And she told him, I love you too, David. And they said goodbye, and David's dream was interrupted by the telephone ringing. And it was his brother, his little brother, breaking the news that their mother had passed away only like 15 minutes before.
Wow.
And I think that this was a shock to David. It's not clear about what their relationship was like, him and his mother and his father, after he left Georgia. I assume it was bad. Mm-hmm. It was always bad. It was never good. And I think that David was estranged. I don't think that he knew that she was in the hospital or that she was sick. He just had a dream about her. And she was saying, I love you and goodbye, which is like heartbreaking, but like closure.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing.
And I think that like people have these kinds of experiences often where they have dreams about loved ones or see loved ones before they die. Mm-hmm. But Harry Guy was there. Harry Guy led his mother to him.
Hey, your mom's here.
Yeah.
David, your mom's here.
Right. So it's like, okay, like with the drowning thing from part 1 of this series, like he thought he was going to die and then he saw a face. If it was Harry Guy's face or Crescent's face, like, okay, maybe extraterrestrial. Mm-hmm. Same thing with this.
It's all crossover, dude.
It's all crossover. It's all one big soup. Okay, now this is kind of scary. Scarier than some other stuff. This kind of brings me back to like the folded up alien. Mm-hmm. But David was in his 60s when this happened. And the memory was from only a few years before. So he was in a spaceship and Crescent and the Mantis were there. And they led him to a room where there was a man lying on a table. And as David stared at the man, he realized the man was actually him. It was himself. Or more so, it was a younger version of himself. And it didn't look like this copy of David was alive. And David was totally confused. And then they asked him, just like Harry Guy had said, can we use your body, David? And just like decades before, he told them that they could. They asked him to lie down on another bed nearby, and when he did, the double began to move. And David wondered if this younger other David was going to be used for more genetic purposes. He was 60 at this point. He's not getting his crank shitted, you know? So... What? It's not funny.
Crank shitted.
He's not getting his shit cranked, and I don't think he can get cranked. I don't think that, you know.
Cialis.
Yeah. Alien Cialis. So when they got his cum in the bowl, jizz in the bowl, I think it's very possible that this DNA was used to make another version of him, just like Robot Grandma. Like DNA can be extracted and then make another person or another copy. I wonder about this other David body. If it also could have been used by the Greys as like different bodies. We have new bodies now. They're asking him, can we use your body? Can we use your semen? They're asking him and he's saying, yeah. So it's like, what are they using it for? Maybe genetic stuff, but like, what if they're using it as their new bodies too? Yeah. Which is interesting. So David would have one final visit with Crescent. And this is the most memorable that David ever had. So he is taken to the ship and he is in a meeting with Crescent. And the two of them are sitting facing one another, but they are not alone. With her, she had a little boy. He guessed that maybe he was like 6 years old. And this boy was one of David and Crescent's children. In David's rendition, his son was more human looking than alien. He looks like a little boy. And David recalls feeling in his heart that him and his hybrid son knew each other very, very well. I wonder if maybe this was the baby he dropped or the baby that he saved, the first baby.
Or it could just be innate since they're all connected to him.
Right. Stories like David's compel people to explain away things that they don't understand, right? In the world of ufology, there are only theories of what, how, and why of abduction phenomena. And David doesn't think about any of these things. He says, quote, I was traumatized. I'm not saying I wasn't, but painting is what helps. Basically paraphrased, Brad Abrams would say, David said it was a catharsis. Once he found a way to visually show the rest of the world, or even just himself, what had happened through art, he was able to process and make sense of it and come to peace with whatever it was that happened to him. David gets to share his story while simultaneously healing his mind, heart, and soul. And he is not embarrassed or frustrated by his encounters, and he doesn't care if anyone believes him or not. He doesn't believe this happened to him, he knows. Today, he still lives a super private life. He may still be working at Lisa's. He probably is. His son Michael supports him. He lives in Thailand with his wife. And allegedly, Michael's never had any encounters of his own. He's very rarely visited by the beings. But he still has dreams and recovers new memories. And he has been featured in a handful of art galleries in New York City. He does not sell his art at all. He does not sell any of his originals. He does sell prints, but they're expensive. They're like $70 plus, which is totally fair. But yeah, like he refuses to sell any of his originals. What do you think of the second part of this series? Like with the studying and the involvement and him being kind of aware and...
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it at least makes the purpose of them using him, like the utility of the events, makes it make more sense. I mean, I can understand them wanting him to fall in love with Crescent. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that he keeps coming back and he's, but it also is like, why are they, I guess I don't understand why they let him get so close and know so much. It's not really necessary. Mm-hmm. But then again, they also thought they were removing his memory.
Yeah.
So
I have a little bit of a theory. I think that they let him in more because he was not afraid. It's a lot easier to, get DNA from him and like impregnate women with him because he doesn't seem to be bothered by it. He seems to enjoy it. And I don't think that that's like very common. When he had that meeting with he was part of that meeting with all those people, I wonder if Crescent was all of their mothers and lovers and teachers. Like those were her people. Maybe they were also training other like hybrid women to become like Crescent so that they could have their own little crew of humans. The theory is that extraterrestrials are slowly creating a population of hybrid human extraterrestrials for the Earth or for another Earth or for the future. That's like the theory. Because it's kind of like, why else? Some people believe that they are doing it to keep their own race alive, that they are not able to continue to genetically thrive without adding another group of DNA into their species, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they are from some place that, resources have become scarce and it's hostile and it's not a hospitable place anymore, and so they have to kind of interbreed to live in these other places. Don't know. Yeah.
I mean, it's very like we very much so don't have the answers, right? Like we talked really briefly about Albert Bender talking to the Flatwoods Monster Men in Black, and he asks like why, and they're like, yeah, well, we just stop at your fucking planet like it's a fucking gas station. You know what I mean? They're like, that's why we come here, because you're just a fucking gas station.
Yeah, you got stuff.
But then also it's like there's all of these races. It's like, are they all from different dimensions and planes? It's obvious that like the mantis people are not the same as the knob-headed man. But also like, where the fuck does hairy guy come from? Who are you?
I mean, they could all be from the same place, and the Greys and the Amazonians are kind of the Amazonians are the most compatible with human DNA. That could be the thing. They could all come from that place, and then they would breed the Crescent human hybrids, and then from there they could introduce hairy man DNA. I don't know. Without knowing what the motive is, you can't really.
Right. But then also I should mention that there are other races that were not involved in this episode that exist. So for instance, there is a race of beings called the Tall Whites. And the Tall Whites are very big. They look like humans, but they have big blue eyes and they're beings of light. So it's like people tend to think that we are very closely, like genetically similar to the tall whites. But also the tall whites have like a race connotation with people who are believers, where they're like ultimate species of alien, and they just so happen to be white with blue eyes and blonde hair. And I think conspiracy theorists run with that.
Anything that's pale and white is generally not a superior being.
No,
It's not super advantageous.
no, but it is to humans on Earth. Like that is
Because racism?
yeah, because we have that here, right, on Earth, and
They like the white ones. We'll make these ones really white. Hell yeah.
right, where it's like, okay, well, you know, all of these dimensional beings are all different shapes and sizes, and they're all fucking different. And there are some that are more human than others, and it just so happens that the tall whites are just tall and white. They're understood as being like very peaceful and very like intensely concerned about the preservation of human life.
Doesn't sound like white people.
I know. So are the Amazonian women just hybrids between grays and tall whites? Like, is it just going to be a whole mixture?
You talking about the tall whites reminded me, and it's somewhat related to this episode, but that movie Extraordinary, the Stan Romanek story
Yeah.
with the hybrid, I had to look it up and remember what his name was, but very similar situation of repeated lifetime visitations for the purpose of creating hybrid beings. So I recommend that. I recommend Love and Saucers, the documentary, because that's free, but Unacknowledged I think it's probably on Tubi and it's probably on Netflix.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's on Netflix, but
Yeah.
that's another really good one if you like hybrid stuff. And it is more having to do with the whites rather than grays. Yeah, it's a really interesting watch. So it just reminded me of that.
The whole idea of like interbreeding and genetic hybrid advancement is like really complicated and a really weird slippery slope. It's hard to talk about because this is also like triggering to a lot of people too. Like I said, like for some humans, I think it's easier to take from them than others.
Yeah.
Right. Like there are, you know, instances with like David Huggins where he's like freely just like, yeah, like let's do it. I love you. And then there's others who have to be tricked into thinking that the being that they're having sex with is someone else. Like a character, like a princess character. I remember I watched one thing where this guy was like, yeah, like I was visited by a gray and then all of a sudden like I saw Cinderella and she like got on top of me and had sex with me. And that was the first time I ever had sex was with Cinderella.
I believe a similar thing happened with that Stan Romanek story.
Yeah.
Or where he was abducted and then there were just like the aliens in the room and then they somehow comforted him and like calmed him down and made him see the most beautiful human woman or like a woman that he liked or something.
Yeah.
And then he was kind of consenting as
Yeah.
much as he could be.
Well, it's a lot easier to extract DNA from them.
Yeah.
From men or from humans that way is when they're consenting. Because then there's also situations with like Whitley Strieber where, I mean, in Communion, I know I always talk about Whitley Strieber, but his abduction is so like prolific. Like his story is so iconic and well known that so he experienced the anal probe and the whole purpose of the anal probe was to probe his prostate so he would ejaculate. And they took his ejaculate and they took it away. And then he has memories of like being with his dad when his dad was abducted and he's abducted. And it's like, okay, why did they do that to him? There's obviously like a lineage, a generational study with these people of taking their DNA. And I think that probably from the very beginning, Whitley was not a good specimen. Like he like was afraid and he was hard to handle. And I mean, he has memories of mantis beings, a female mantis being communicating with him telepathically, sounding frustrated and annoyed, saying, "What can we do to make you stop screaming?" Like
He wasn't very cooperative.
No, he wasn't. But I mean, it's like if you've been abducting a lineage of men from one for many generations, you have to take them regardless of whether or not they're cooperative. So I think it's like when they have situations with...
Yeah, if they're part of your like study or your program, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, if we have someone like fucking David who is like giving up his seed left and right and is like having a good time, they could take his seed and they can create another David that is constantly consensual and will be forever. They don't even need his son. Because I think over time, they probably make them more agreeable and easier to take away.
Sure, yeah.
And
that makes sense.
Stud out, right? So I don't know. That's all kind of like speculative. But once I get really thinking about it, it kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because there is such an array. And then when we think about women who have these medical procedures done, it is really bad.
Yeah.
It is really, really, really bad. And it's not even something that I like to talk about because, like, I am obviously very, very aware that men who allegedly have these reproductive examinations and procedures done on them are traumatized regardless. Like, David even said, he's like, yeah, like I had free will the whole time, but I'm not saying I wasn't traumatized. I was. And people like Whitley Strieber is like traumatized for life. You know, he even says like I was raped. And women, no matter what, always have negative experiences. They're never happy. It's never consensual. They can never take reproductive information from women without traumatizing them.
Yeah, without force. Yeah.
And destroying their bodies. Like, period.
Yeah, I mean, it's consider that all these years of human life and human intellectual evolution, and we can only get so crude as to fucking like pull open a fucking lady's vagina and swab it to look for health problems or stick a fucking x-ray wand in it.
Yeah.
It's all still really primitive. And so you imagine another species who is only on maybe like a textbook basis familiar with human female anatomy, and they don't give a fuck also.
Right, because you're a specimen.
Yeah.
You're like a quail.
Would be extremely brutal.
Yeah.
I think.
I would say 100% of them say that they're brutalized. You know.
Checks out.
They don't have beings forcing themselves onto them. They're having reproductive procedures done on them. And for some women, it's lifelong, and for others, it's not. But it's fucked up. Like, I remember this one woman talks about how her mother, herself, and her daughter had all experienced reproductive experimentation by extraterrestrials.
Jesus.
And none of the boys, like, I don't know if it's because they didn't have any boys to take from, but like to know that your daughter is fated because you've been fated by 3 generations, which is pretty sad. But there was one woman who talks about how this is not uncommon. But when she was a little girl, she got gooed, right? Like how David got gooed. But she remembers specifically they put it just only on her genitals. And I mean, she gives some details that are really disturbing. Yeah. And they just like put it on her, and then she got a sensation from it that adults get. But she's a little girl. And then she like started her period really, really early, and she was super hyper sexual and was very interested in sex very, very young. And like
It's like they induced puberty.
yes. And then throughout her life, like she ended up being in the Air Force. She was like a veteran.
Okay.
And then throughout her life, she did have reproductive issues. And she like had a hard time like getting pregnant and all this stuff. And she had to get like a procedure done, and she had all of this internal scarring in her uterus. Like she had been operated on over and over and over again. And that is not uncommon for women to say, I had this huge needle put inside my navel, and I was screaming and I was screaming and I was crying, and then they took something away from me. They're literally just taking eggs.
Yeah.
Some women say that they believe that they are having unformed fetuses placed inside of them, and then they grow for a few months and then they're removed.
Oh, they're using them as like incubators?
Yeah.
Ugh.
And a lot of those women who say that happened to them, yeah, like I wasn't having my period. And then I went to the doctor and they said that I was pregnant, but there was no baby.
That's so fucking weird.
Yeah, like it was a false pregnancy. It's and then they can see all of these like wounds and shit inside of them. It's like fucking weird. So when it happens to women, it's like it's traumatizing beyond belief, and they just I don't think that they want to fuck with it. But studying out men is a lot easier, especially since men are just so, primitive to begin with.
No offense.
No offense, but I mean,
You dogs.
I mean, they
No
just
offense to you bunch of fucking hounds.
Crescent just looked at David and he was like hard.
He like could not get his quote, I could not get my pants off fast enough.
Yeah.
Quote.
He ripped his own pants off
He said, ah!
and jumped inside of her. Like,
That crusty.
where it's like with women, they have to like put gel on them when they're 8 years old and then still tie them down
Yeah.
to like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's women are different. So
Proposal.
yeah.
End forced hybridization 2025.
Yeah. It would be nice if they started to work on consent. I don't know if they're still doing it now. I'd like to look into it actually.
Yeah, I haven't really researched any of that stuff in like
A long
5
time.
years. Like, yeah, it's been a minute.
Well, it gets so deep and I can't look at
yeah.
it for too long.
I could end up on some forum and die down there. So,
Yeah, literally me too. Yeah, because it's just kind of gets into brain rot. 2025 is a brain rot era. Like we are in full brain rot. So I always feel weird talking about stuff like this. It was like even in Robot Grandma, I was like, I don't want to sound crazy, but I think that the whole point of her like waking up outside of her tent with the wound is that they took DNA from her. And it's like, they're not going to take reproductive DNA from her
she old.
because she's old. But allegedly, we know his name is Indiana, right? The kid. Robot Grandma told Indiana that he was from space and his mother. He said, you're from your mother and space.
Yeah.
And the real Grandma Cappy was his paternal grandmother, not his maternal grandmother. So it's like the lineage is on his mother's side, not his father's.
Yeah.
So it's like they don't have DNA from Grandma Cappy, but what they can do is they can fucking stab her in the neck and take a little bit and then make a fucking shitty like robot fucking double of her that barely works and put it in Mount Shasta.
Sparking.
Yeah, put it in Mount Shasta.
Grandma?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking lost city of Lemuria, fucking full of fucking robot grandmas and shit. So I don't know. I mean, kind of flying off the rails on the hybrid thing, but that's what this episode is about. That's what part 2 is about. What did you think of the packaged alien?
I don't know. It doesn't bother me that much. I feel like I've kind of accepted that quote unquote aliens are among us. Probably sound weird sounding so certain. Like they're people, they're in suits, they're whatever. I really don't. I'm not concerned personally.
Yeah.
I don't have anything that they would want.
Yeah, I agree.
I think if anything, extraterrestrials would be doing that either to integrate into Earth society or to just like reap resources.
Yeah.
It's whatever. I don't.
Yeah, I agree.
The world's going to catch on fire anyway. I don't care.
Yeah, literally. I agree. I think that that's like super accurate. I mean, if they wanted to hurt us, they would have.
Oh, yeah.
And
fucking hundreds of years ago, they would have just blown up the Earth.
they know that we're fucking stupid.
Yeah,
They
we
know.
suck. Earth is a failed planet and a failed civilization.
Literally.
The human race.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, they know that. They know that we're fucking dumb. They treat us like we're children, just like with David. Like, they know that we're lower level beings. We're basically, like I said, warmongering half monkeys. Like, they know all those things. But the only way that they can make us not that way is to hybridize us, I think.
Yeah. They're like, oh, some aspects of you are like advantageous.
Yeah, like our powerful, like DNA.
Yeah.
But like we're not telepathic.
Damn it.
We're not intelligent.
Damn it.
We're violent. We're aggressive. We're primitive. We're not developed, our brains, at least. So they're like, well, what if we made humans that were
Not shitty.
that were 10 times more advanced? Because it's not like these current humans are going to be able to advance because their planet is going to die and they're all going to die. They're going to get wiped out. They're going to wipe themselves out before they can advance. So maybe they're just speeding up the process.
Yeah,
I think that's accurate.
I think the next step in evolution would just be hybridization. I think natural humans, I think that's like a plateau. That doesn't go anywhere.
We're not we're going to all be dead before we're not going to make it.
Like we went from, what is it? Fish to monkey to man. Is that right?
We were in the water first.
Okay, so it was fish to monkey to man.
Yeah.
Ass to mouth.
Ass to mouth.
But yeah, it's like
simplification.
Fish
but yeah.
to monkey to man to that's it.
Yeah.
Or better man. It would just be nice if it wasn't forceful. It's just hard because to get the best DNA, they can't just take volunteers.
No.
Which is shitty. Technically, I understand why they're forcing DNA out of people and forcing these experiments, but it doesn't make it like right.
I think that they just also, I don't think that people understand because they're like, well, why are they taking random people and not just like powerful celebrities who?
Because they're fucking just celebrities. They're useless.
Well, like we talked about, it's a lineage thing. It's a long-term study. They have to continue to take from the same line because their DNA is the most advanced that they've been able to work with. They can't just take some random.
It's the most progressed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like, that kind of makes sense. Obviously, this is speculative, but I think that it makes sense that they just have to speed up the process, and they've been trying to for hundreds of years. Mm-hmm. And now they know that they're really running out of time, especially after we discovered nuclear power. And we immediately used it to fucking kill and destroy our planet. So they're trying. That's why all of their messages have to do with preservation. Yeah. And peace, because they're like...
Yeah, they're like, don't use nukes. Save the environment.
And who else are they supposed to talk to about it? It's very confusing. It gets very, very deep, but we can move on from it. I think no matter what, I do believe that there are aliens. I do not care that they are using people to create hybrids.
True.
They could be doing it to me. They could be doing it to my family. I don't know. And I'm going to be dead before anything ever comes from it. You know, so I don't really think it has anything to do with me.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about knowing and embracing not reproducing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have a lineage to suffer in the future. It ends with me.
Yeah, that's like my thing too.
The earth and suffering ends with me.
Yeah, like I don't really want my grandkids to have to fight in the water wars. Same question as from the first part. What paintings are your favorite from part 2?
Fuck, I closed out of the document. Hang on.
Oh my God. You want me to go first?
Yeah, tell me which one's your favorite.
I have 2. So the first one...
hang on. I got to type and you can hear it really easily.
It is loud, but it's not that loud.
I type like an AK. Okay. I have it open. You tell me which one's your favorite.
Okay, so obviously the white, the first time he goes through the portal, the white painting with the hairy guy, that one is definitely one of my favorites. I think it's just strange with like the big white room and then the black window with the earth. The hairy guy is there. He's just like, and then there's like the gray is standing behind him, like hiding. Is fucking weird. And then the other one that is my favorite is the packaged alien. The packaged alien is scary as fuck.
I have 2 favorites.
Okay.
One of them is just purely from an artistic standpoint, an aesthetic standpoint, the one of him coming in the bowl. I just love that. Yeah. I just think topically, aesthetically, it's great.
It's amazing.
I would get that framed in on my wall, 100%.
Hell yeah.
And then the one of him when he encounters all his babies and he's like, oh
yeah,
oh my God. Yeah. And like I think it's one of the mantis things is like gesturing at these walls and walls of babies. And he's just like arms out at his side going, oh.
He's also wearing like pajama pants.
Yeah, he has no shirt and then like blue stripy pajama pants. He's like, oh.
And I like it because it's the nursery room too that he like captures.
Yeah, it's colorful. Yeah.
Yeah, he like captures the nursery room. Really cool. Like, I'm so excited to put a lot of these pictures, a lot of these paintings. I keep calling them pictures. A lot of these paintings up on the Instagram because they are seriously gorge. And
yeah, even if you don't care about the story and don't believe in it, as paintings, they're so interesting. His like nature settings are really nice.
Well, that's something that's interesting because he said that before he started to do paintings of his experiences, he did landscapes.
Yeah, and
that
you
was
can
his
tell.
favorite. Yeah, he liked to do landscapes and portraits.
He did portraits?
But a lot of the portraits that he did were, I think, charcoal.
Because I was going to say his portraits are a little bit funky.
They're funky as fuck. But yeah, like his landscapes are beautiful. But his body proportions are wild.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. All his characters they're kind of blocky, but also gangly in a weird way.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I just came upon, I just came all over this painting. The one of the hairy man when he comes in asking for consent to use his body. It almost looks like he's glowing from behind a curtain.
Yeah. He's like behind
and his
a
eyes are
curtain.
glowing. And you think he has titties. I think he has big, strong, hairy pecs.
I think they're breasts, dude.
No, I think his pecs. He's strong.
Well,
Look at his, what is this, traps? Right here?
Yeah. Ooh. Well, I feel like there's a nipple.
Many male mammals have nipples.
I don't think that why would he give him a nipple? Because he's hairy. I guess a man can also have a nipple that's
under hair.
Also have breasts. Like, I don't know. But regardless, it's one of my favorites of hairy guy.
Yeah, I like
regardless of the context, because you're right. Like, he's behind a curtain, but he's not.
Yeah, it's like he's phasing through it.
Yeah.
And his eyes are definitely like glowing through or like phased through, like to show that they're watching, but it's a very cool painting.
Yeah. And then it's not centered either, because it's
the composition is really cool.
His composition is like excellent.
It's pretty good, yeah.
I think that's why I like the white painting so much, composition wise. It's crazy. His painting of Crescent with the baby, dangling the baby, is also super beautiful. Anyways, that's that. Kind of got crazy there at the end, but you know,
that's what this is for.
This is what this is for. We hope that you liked this series. I mean, this was a really interesting thing to research and to look into. I think that the worst part about it is a lot of people's opinions about David Huggins' story, having to listen to other podcasts and read articles about people who think that he's just like a moron.
Oh, I imagine.
But I think that his story is like incredibly fascinating. I think that it's very important. And I think that everything that he's done is actually amazing. All of his art, everything that he's ever done, in my opinion. But yeah, watch the documentary, listen to his interviews, listen to his Q&As, read his book, like read the Love in an Alien Purgatory. Like, it's crazy. It is absurd, but it is fascinating. And like David, I don't care if you believe it or not.
Damn.
Yeah, that's about it. Anyways, come back next week for more
hybrids. Do
me a favor. Go think about it. Go paint an image of a repressed memory.
Oh, Jesus.
And see if anything else comes to you.
That sounds terrible.
Email us at radiogravepodcast@gmail.com. And if you're an abduction victim, email us at radiogravepodcast@gmail.com and let us know your trauma. Tell us about how you're traumatized.
Oh my God. You don't have to. Just saying, you don't have to.
Or submit your story to our listeners' submissions. That'd be great.
Yeah.
We want a variety. So.
No.
Oh.
I just want hybrids.
Oh. Well, we can't always get what we want. Thank you for listening. Dom has been scrolling on her phone for the past 10 minutes.
I have to order DoorDash because I have a $15 credit.
Oh.
And my partner just got home, and I'm trying to order before he
Oh my
does.
God. Okay. Well, let's end it there then. Thank you so much for listening to Radio Grave. I'm your host, Amber, and that's your host, Danel and
Hey.
Dandelion.
Dandelion?
Dan
DeLillo.
Oh my God. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Catch you then.
Catch you next week. Bye.
Bye.
At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere. It is speculated that these objects are of extraterrestrial origin. The broadcast will quiet at this time for your safety. Continue to carry out the following instructions.
Radio Grave Podcast is hosted by Amber Byland and Dominique Makasuya. Music courtesy of AOA Music, Carl Casey at White Bat Audio, and intro music by Simon Big Byling. Audio mixing and editing by Amber Byland, logo and original art by Dominique Makasuya. Special thanks to Selma and Obi Henneke, Austin Smith, and all our supporters on Patreon. All other media and sound clips used are protected under fair use and are for the purpose of criticism, commentary, news reporting, education, and research. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.